and then you can submit to them, and normally they are very supportive on this. They will come and audit, they will see that you meet the criteria in R&D and so on, then they will give you. And right now, the requirement is that you need to have manufacturing. Where whatever you do the R&D and then you do the manufacturing, then you are entitled to this double tax deduction.
So means it's not entitled for service industry.
No, it's only for R&D only, the double tax deduction.
But what if let's say R&D plus service?
You can discuss with the IRB, right? Because the whole idea of the double tax deduction is for R&D. So yes, you have a point when you say to them that this is for R&D, right? Then you are entitled to this double tax deduction. Then when you explain to them, they see yes, you are doing this, and then they acknowledge, then you will grant you that double tax deduction. Right? However, certain, because we are all human beings, we interpret the law differently. Some people might interpret that okay, this R&D is only for manufacturing, but you don't have manufacturing, so you are not entitled to this double tax. But again, you have to discuss with the authority. And like I say that we are blessed because our government, they are very business friendly people, right? Sometimes the law be interpreted because of the wording of it, but the intent of why the government want to introduce the double tax deduction is because to help restrict the R&D activities. Okay, very famous for the HR, the 1955 Employment Act. Right. Yeah. So, and this Employment Act has been revised many times and so on. Right. So you can see. Like when you want to terminate an employee, it's not that easy, the process, right? If you just terminate an employee because of performance, the employee can challenge you under the Section 20, the Industrial Relations Act, for unfair dismissal, right? Then you have to go to the RR office and so on, and then discuss about this, and the process will be very lengthy. And end up that the company, okay, we just pay you, come to a certain amount and then pay and settle off the court. But some company, they do not want to settle, they just go ahead and fight in the court and so on, right? And then when the employee not happy and so on, and then lost the case and so on, challenged in high court and so on, so the case keep going on. Right? So it's a challenge mostly to the employer. But however, the law allows that if you want to terminate, you can terminate, provided you have helped the employee, you have given enough notice, you have helped the employee to improve, you have helped them, but still they cannot improve. You have given them enough time, then you give the first warning. They cannot, you have to document it. Okay, the first warning letter, this employee because of this, and then you give help to the employee, and you give enough time to the employee to improve, but still cannot. Then you give a second warning letter. Still cannot, the process. Then you give a third warning letter. After the third warning letter, then only you terminate the employee. And the employee not happy, go to the RR and claim unfair dismissal, right? And then let's say that the RR officer look at it and say that okay, we will take this case to the court. Okay. So at the court, you have to prove. The burden of proof is on the employer, right? To prove. So the judge normally will be on the employee side, right? Because we are all human, right? We have this feeling. So normally the judge will be, although the judge didn't say that way, but normally we do that. But when the employee show the first warning letter, then the judge will say, okay, when the employer show the first warning letter and enough help be given, so the judge might think that okay, this is a good employer, have tried. And then when you give the second warning letter, when you produce it as evidence to the court, then the judge will look at, okay, now the judge will be in the middle already, right? from the employee side, the judge will be neutral. Then when you show the third warning letter to the judge, then the judge will be with the employer, right? And say that, okay, you have done your level best already to help the employee. You just that the employee, just couldn't perform to your expectation, right? Then you win the case. So this is the process that you have to go through this. And this is one example. There are many examples that you can find in the Employment Act, and then in terms of termination, in terms of many things. Okay. So when you deal with employees, you find a lot of. Sometimes people say that I do not want to manage people. I want to be individual contributor, much easier my life. Right? But somebody have to manage the employee. KPIs. How many of you have in your organization have KPIs, key performance indicator? I think most companies have, right? And normally this KPI, there's a lot of this KPI, right? Measure a lot. Right? Like the earlier one on is the statistical process control, and most of this KPI measure is all the lagging indicator that didn't really communicate at the end result on it. So you need to find the KPI that gives you a leading indicator. So when you can find a KPI that gives a leading indicator, that's the best KPI. For example, that in manufacturing, people will monitor the cost. How much is the cost they produce, what is the cycle time, what is the yield, what is the quality level, and so on. These are all lagging indicators after the fact that you measure. You have a goal, then you measure it, see whether you meet the goal or not. And the second time you have at 95th percentile, some measure at average, some measure at 99th percentile, some 97th percentile. Different organizations have a different measurement. How many of you use a scientific method or any method to determine goal, to set goal? Every year or every quarter we have to set new goals, right? How does your organization set goal? You can do a research also on how to do goal setting. Some organizations use a half-life theory to set goal. Right? Engineers like to have a method so that people cannot challenge them. How you achieve? Why you say the goal is this? Then they say that I have this theory that I use half-life theory to set goal, so nobody can challenge the engineer. Right? But to use the half-life theory, you can use it. It's more systematic approach. But when I was with AMD, when we engaged with the Porsche Consulting, then Porsche use 8% every year for improvement. Then we asked them why you use 8%. Then they say throughout their experience as a consultant, they found that 8% is reasonable to set the goal that every year to improve. Right? But once you achieve it, you don't have to wait for the year to end to change the goal. Maybe in one quarter you achieve the 8%, then you change the goal. No need to wait until the end of the year, or since you already achieved, you just relax on it, right? And do not set goal which you can easily meet or you already met. Some of us, because of our performance being measured against the goal, then we do not want to put this bold audacious goal. We just want to put goal that without doing anything we can meet, or just a little bit of effort we can make. Right? So if we do that, then the employees will not be motivated, will not be highly motivated. Right? But if we set a goal too high also, then the employee will not be motivated also, because they know that they cannot achieve it. Right? When I was a young engineer at AMD, there is a statistician that came to AMD to teach about goal setting. So I remember this story, so I just want to share this with you about goal setting. So he said that, like playing with a dog. Maybe dog is not a good example, but I just use dog as an example here, right? When you throw something, or let's say that you hold a bone and ask the dog to jump, okay? So if the bone is not that high, the dog think that he can achieve it, then you will try to jump to achieve it. As you raise higher and higher, the dog will try to keep jumping to get it. Until at one point when it's too high, then you know what the dog will do. The dog will not jump, but will just raise its leg and pee at us. That's what our employee will do. If we set too high a goal. Right? So when we set a goal, we need to set the right expectation. Something that that you can achieve. Right? It's stretched, but it's achievable. It's not something that is impossible. It's like you ask a person to walk on the water. So these KPIs are very important because it drives behavioral change. You want to have a KPI that will drive behavioral change. There's no point to have a KPI that will not drive changes in behavior. Because if the employee keep doing the same thing to achieve it, means what? Right? Einstein say that, if you keep doing the same thing and you expect a different result, that's called insanity. Right? How can if you keep doing the same thing and expect different result? You're not, because if you keep doing the same thing, you get the same result. Right? Maybe just a little bit of improvement here and there only. It just in statistics it's called the fluctuation, the normal variation only. Right? So KPIs will be very meaningful if you drive behavioral change in the organization. Then you can see that there are changes that are happening in the organization. Then people are moving towards high end of technology, or different ways of doing things. I forgot to mention this. The best KPI for us is to eliminate our job. You'll be scared. You will see. Right? Your best goal is to eliminate your job. Right? Do not worry. If you eliminate your job, the company will keep you. I can almost guarantee this. If you eliminate your job, the company will keep you. They will not eliminate you, although that you eliminate the job. Because it's very difficult to find people who can eliminate their job and who's willing to work so hard to eliminate their job. Because when you eliminate your job, means the company has improved the productivity. So they will keep people who can eliminate the job one. Because they know that these are the threshold. Try this. If you can eliminate your job, I can almost guarantee you the company will not terminate you. They will keep you. Although there's no job for you, they will find a job later on to give to you because they do not want to lose you. Believe me, this is my experience. And I've seen people who eliminate their job and become very, very successful in their career. Now, it's not all the channels, right? Now I go specific to the cost. Cost is very, very important because that's how we do business. So, our stakeholder and so on, we want to give the earnings per share and so on, and then we want to pay out dividend, right? And then we need the profit to continue to invest our business and so on. So cost is very important to us. Okay. And gross margin, the company will measure what is the gross margin. Their company will have a 70% gross margin. Their company will only have 10% gross margin. Right? Those companies that have 10% gross margin, they need a lot of activity, a lot of volume, right? and then maybe their net margin is only 4 to 5% only. But those with the gross margin of 60-70%, then the net is like 50% and so on. So these are the company that are financially very stable. For example, company like Altera, gross margin is like almost to 70%. So very stable in terms of financial, right? And those in the OSAT, those OSAT is the subcon company. Normally their gross margin are not that high, 15%, 20%. So they need the volume, they need the economy of scale, right? So different company have a different expectation in terms of the gross margin. So gross margin is very important. So that the first thing that you look at is the gross margin of the company. So that depends on the cost of business. So how to improve the gross margin? So you can study your own company and see that what is your current gross margin and how you want to improve that gross margin. Okay. In manufacturing, unit cost is another measurement. Unit cost is defined by how much volume that you produce and what is the cost to produce that, right? So the ratio of that volume and the cost will be the unit cost. That means per unit, what is the cost to produce it? In the old days, people measure, for example, the semiconductor on the leaded frame and so on, like 24 lead. People measure 24 lead equivalent, 28 lead equivalent, 40 lead equivalent. Now, I don't think people measure that way anymore. Maybe 30 years ago, people measured that kind of equivalent. Now they measure the absolute unit cost. And then you will see the trend, Then the unit cost, the company will expect us to reduce the unit cost over time, right? So that we improve our productivity. Because our salary keep increasing, right? But the selling price keep reducing. Then in order to be productive, we need to reduce the cost. And how to reduce the cost? Right? Through the creativity of the workforce. Then the measurement, one of the measurements that people use is the unit cost. To see that in that manufacturing, is the unit cost improvement is there or not? Right? So, but unit cost alone is not enough, because when you have a complex product, let's say that this year you do quite a simple product, but next year you do a very complicated product, then how you want to measure the unit cost? So you need to add the factor of complexity. So how you want to do that? How you want to add the measure of complexity instead of the unit cost? To show that you factor that complexity, then the unit cost is different. That's why sometimes people use equivalent portion of it, right? So until now, I haven't seen a company that have this unit cost with the complexity added to it. Yeah, the right scale. Maybe they already have, because I left the manufacturing quite some time already. Maybe manufacturing already advanced and they managed to come up with that measurement. So that's why I say apple to apple comparison. Is it apple to apple comparison? Because when the product complexity are different, then it's not apple to apple comparison really, right? So how do you factor that complexity inside? So you can make a study and you can make a proposal. Okay, now I have a method on how to measure unit cost with the factor of complexity or measurement of any other factors in. You know what is OSAT, right? OSAT is outsourced semiconductor assembly and test. These are normally the subcon, the subcontractor. People like ASE, Amcor, Spill. These are the OSAT for the semiconductor. Right? So normally the in-house, they will compare the OSAT in terms of the cost, whether to do in-house or to outsource it. So if we are not cost competitive, what happens? They will outsource it, right? When they outsource it, what happens to the workforce? They have to shrink the workforce. Then you will be laid off and so on. Some company will wait for the attrition to happen, because if they can wait for the attrition, if they know that the attrition is very high, so they just wait for the attrition. But if they can't wait for the attrition, then they do the layoff. Right? But layoff also not cheap because you have to pay them, and then the image of the company. So all these aspects you have to think about. So for example, in this case, if the in-house cost is $1, to produce one unit is $1, and the offset cost is also $1, what will be your decision? Huh? You outsource or you keep it? Because it's the same. It's $1 versus $1. Who is more competitive? Is it the in-house or the outside? If you ask the employee say, yeah, keep it because it's the same. If you ask the management say, take it out. Right? Because why? Why management want to take it out? Because over a period of time, the cost will increase. Because the labor, the operating costs and so on, like electricity, transportation, everything goes up. If you don't reduce the cost, then the cost will go up. So the management will say, take it out. Then the employee will complain, we are the same, why you want to take it out? Because the management look forward. Right? Okay. And the other part is that the offset, when we do the in-house comparison, normally we don't take into account the profit. Right? The in-house one, we don't have the profit. It's a cost. But the offset, when they operate, when they charge us even $1, they actually factor the profit inside that.